Alita, do you want to get us started?
Okay. Well, these are my lovely open dialogue trainers from around the world here with us. Judith, Cathy, and Mia and I have been meeting once a month since the beginning of the pandemic because we were disoriented in the world of the pandemic and we needed one another. And I'm just happy to see them. And when Alex asked me if I wanted to share about open dialogue in a conversation, I said, well, only if I can bring my co-women dialogical trainers to talk about it with me. So what do you think, ladies?
Well,
oh, sorry.
sorry. Yes, maybe we can introduce ourselves. So please, Judith.
Yeah, my name is Judith Brown. I'm from Australia. That's all I think I want to say at the moment. I'm sitting here at 6 o'clock in the morning with my fan on. It's getting hot. Yeah.
And my name is Mia. I live in Finland. I'm originally, and I have been living almost all my life in Lapland. But at the moment, I'm living in Helsinki, which is 800 kilometers from Western Lapland. And I'm very, very happy that we have snow in Helsinki because that's not always the case. And I'm used to the snow and cold and dark at this time of the year in Lapland. What else can I say? I want to say I have one daughter and one partner. I have been working in this human work in mental health services in Western Lapland about 23 years now, and I'm very happy that we have had the possibility, even though it came through experience of pandemic, but I'm very happy that we got the possibility to be together and do the writing as well. Yeah. Welcome all.
Thank you, Mia. So I'm Cathy and I'm based just outside London. And I'm actually in Yorkshire at the moment visiting relatives. So usually I have to blur my background because it's so untidy, but actually because it's an Airbnb, it's much tidier than my own house. So, yes, so I met Mia probably about 10 or so years ago now, and Alita and Judith along the way. Alita and Judith and myself were all on a Helsinki trainers training in 2016 to 2018. And then, yeah, the pandemic and our connection where we held space for each other, probably about once a month, was very, very special to us all, I think. And so when the invitation to write something about open dialogue came, we decided together that we would do that.
I feel like I'd like to know everybody else. That would be good, if that's okay.
Would it be possible if you could share in a way that feels appropriate for you who you are and why are you here? What made you come here?
I can start. I know some of you have already heard this, but I'm going to do a little shorter version. I'm Glenna Gerard, and I live in northern New Mexico. And I'm here today because I can be, in terms of my calendar, and because I've been working with dialogue for a lot of years. And I'm interested to hear about, from these four women, about open dialogue and the training experience. That's me.
Thank you.
I'm Bruce Kirchhoff. I'm a scientist, or was a scientist. I've relatively recently retired. I've been helping facilitate a form of dialogue for a long time. And I was interested in, I've recently become an associate in the Taos Institute, and I'm trying to understand what the Taos Institute means by dialogue, because we're using the same term, but I don't think I mean the same thing as dialogue as what I've heard from Taos Institute people saying. And so I want to ask the question of the people here of what do you mean by dialogue and what do you mean by open dialogue? And it seems to be associated with, in the Taos Institute, with in a therapeutic context, which it is not for me. And so I'd like to explore some of those differences and understand at a deeper level what people working through Taos mean by dialogue.
Thank you.
I can introduce myself. My name's Liz, and I'm in the U.S. in Pennsylvania. I am in the same town as Penn State, and I am a statistician, and I ended up here. It's been a roundabout journey, but I'm just curious to hear and learn from everyone and think about how things translate in the context of the work that I do.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Sarah Apedale. I live on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I came because I'm currently working on my PhD proposal, and I would like to study the concept of relational space, and doing that through by connecting with potentially to do my research with other people who are who are part of the Taos Institute. And through dialogue, I'm very interested in dialogue as a way of generating relational fields. And so, like Bruce, I suppose I'm curious about how dialogue is defined and undertaken, and yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dita. I'm currently seated in Berlin, Germany, but I am originally from Slovakia, Czech Republic. And what attracted me or brought me here today is that first, I had a chance to participate in the international training in collaborative practices, and I did so in Mexico and in Czech Republic. And I had the idea to study how the same ideas travel around different cultures. But since I think 2014, we've been bringing the idea of open dialogue as the Finnish approach to Czech Republic, and I've participated in 4 different trainings, foundational trainings in open dialogue. and I'm currently living in Germany and trying to understand how the trainings are being done over here. And I am incredibly interested and would actually like to pursue something further with trying to see how or what are the elements and what is being created, or what is it that we are learning when we are talking about learning open dialogue or going through the foundational training in open dialogue. So I'm really curious about what the conversation is going to be like today. Happy to be here.
I'll continue. I'm currently in Brno, Czech Republic. I'm here because of Dita, who who's told me about it. I'm a psychiatrist. I also participated in few trainings of open dialogue. I'm kind of active in teaching it here in Czech Republic. But I would say I have an international scope. And I'm really interested to see what's going on in America and England and Australia and other countries. So yeah, glad to be here. And yeah, maybe in terms of my background, I was a part of early intervention teams in psychosis, one of the first ones here in Czech Republic. And I was trying to combine the open dialogue approach with early intervention. But that team doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And yeah, so here I am.
Here we are.
Thank you. Okay. I wonder that how can we talk about what we were kind of planning was that as the process of our writing was that we didn't replan it. We were doing it as the way we stayed present in the process and in the moment. So that was our planning for this discussion too. And I now wonder, Cathy, Alita, and Judith, that how should we proceed here? I hear that people are coming from very different, as always, from very different points of views and expectations and wonderings and curiosities. And I wonder that what could be a good way for us to continue to share from us and what has brought us here and what has brought us into this approach and into these ideas. So I wonder what's on your mind.
First of all, I'm just noticing that Tahira has written in the chat about herself. So just wanted to include that person here, even though we haven't seen her and heard her words. We've read them, so welcome. Yeah, how should we proceed? What are you sitting with, Judith, Alita, Mia?
I think that's where, when we started, there was a sense of just stillness and waiting, which has been really nice. It's been filled with parts of everyone's stories. So I'm wondering if we start there, is just reflecting on where we are now, where the four of us sit now. Yeah. I think that I was noticing in myself almost a sense of the world, actually, which was really nice. And words, as when we were writing the article, words were sort of staying with me, and and ideas staying with me, all of them actually. But relational space sort of is just sort of landed. And that's all for now from me, but I wonder what else is going to arise as we just reflect together.
I was thinking about the what Bruce said, you know, about definitions and what is it that we mean when we say dialogue or open dialogue. And I don't even know that my own definition stays the same over time, because it, you know, what the term together started as in Western Lapland as a way of working with crisis and with people in need in difficult times. You know, it actually has its roots in philosophy and literary criticism and analysis, you know, with Bakhtin. So I like that there in Taos there are different fields coming together that are questioning what we're doing here and how we're doing it all the time, you know. Even, and then what Stan said stuck with me too, because we create something and then it goes away. We're all set with the team and now we're up and running, and now what do we do when it doesn't get paid for anymore, or, you know, the people move away, or, you know, like, can we stay in dialogue? How do we stay in dialogue when that happens? So
yeah, and I think that's something that I kind of accredit to you, Judith, this staying with. How do we stay with? And that's something that has always struck me, really, or feels very important to me. How do we stay when it's not easy and it's messy, and all of our polyphony is there's lots of different voices inside us or outside of us. How do we stay, and how do we continue to be alongside? Which sounds maybe a simple question, but an incredibly hard thing, I think, to do in the moment.
So I'm still having a bit of a problem understanding what you're talking about. And one of my hats is as a scientific communication trainer. And so what I'm hearing is a lot of in-group talk that uses jargon and words that you all understand and someone outside your group, me, doesn't understand. And I'm picking up little bits and pieces from what you mean, from the stuff that's between the words. I'm getting a sense of what you're about. I would like it be helpful to me if you could say more clearly. And I just glanced at your article, and there's a little bit in there that defines what open dialogue, what you mean by that. In order to help this, let me try to tell you what I think, what dialogue is to me. And then you can tell me what you think of dialogue and how that's different than that. So for me, when a group of people come together in a space, virtual or real, where they try to work not just out of their heads, but I would say out of their hearts, and they listen to something that is transpersonal, so that they're listening not just to their own intellect talking, but they're listening to something that can speak through them. And that enlarges to the space where there is something that lives in the group that is not just personally transpersonal, but is group transpersonal. And my hope is to bring people to the experience of that group transpersonal being thing that is there. Because I believe, I think we're at the beginning of it really experiencing that, but I believe that kind of experience leads to something that could be really transformative in the world. So to me, that's what I think of as dialogue. How do you see that the same or different? What is dialogue to you guys?
I think that's a beautiful definition. I just really appreciate that so much about the heart and transpersonal. And I don't know that I would have said it that way, but I feel it that way. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and it's so lovely actually that question has come, Bruce, because that's what I guess when we're trying to teach about being dialogical, we are trying to help people to feel it, and that's what we tried to do in our article as well, was rather than go here's the answers, kind of trying to create a space where it was actually something about dialogue was felt. And it's a real tension, I think, that we all hold when we're training in open dialogue too, because there's a lot of but how do we actually do it? What actually is it? As opposed to let's see if we can't feel it and be it in the moment. So that's a very helpful question you brought there, Bruce. And yes, I loved your definition too.
Well, what's coming up for me, Bruce, is I was feeling like the words you were using and your ideas were familiar to me. And yeah, they just felt familiar. So I'm wondering about the idea of different understandings of dialogue, because your words felt so familiar, and yet you're coming from a really a different discipline, actually. So words like transformative and you know, the space between words all felt, oh yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. That's familiar territory. So I'm coming away, I'm sitting here, I suppose, more curious about what the differences are. And then I think, actually, I'm not sure, you know, the space between commonalities and difference. Do we actually look at those two, or do we stay in that, what you call the space between, and see what emerges from that? But one thing I do want to say is, when you said we're having this conversation, the four of us, and you felt, I don't know what the words, I can't remember your exact words, but on the edge of that. And that brought up a human response from me of, oh, oh, no. You know, so maybe that's what dialogue isn't, is where someone experiences that sense of not being together. And maybe what dialogue is maybe my human response to when you said that, which is, oh no, wanting, my response. I wonder if dialogue is somehow linked with response as well. Yeah, so thank you for your thoughts.
Yes, and I was thinking 22 years ago when I went to work in psychiatry in Western Lapland. And I was holding, as a young nurse, I was holding these ideas that when we are working here with people with mental health difficulties, we need to fix it somehow, because that's what psychiatry is about. And then I went there and I was told that no, you have got it all wrong. It's not about fixing, it's about creating these dialogic spaces and respecting the otherness, and our whole system is built around that. And then I was there like, okay, this wasn't, I didn't learn this at school at all. But so that was my very first kind of learning, that it's about not knowing. And of course, that comes also from Harleen, because Harleen has been part of the process of creating these ideas in Western Lapland and in many places around the world, as we know, when talking about the collaboration and dialogue and connection. So I was told that it's about not knowing, it's about not fixing, but it's not only about me as a nurse, me as a psychotherapist, and a person who is come to the service. It's about us as a whole organization of institution of a public healthcare system. So of course, when kind of learning about that and getting into these ideas that how can dialogue manifest in very rigid organizations has been one of the most powerful things in my life, and it has changed me as a person, to see that how we can work as a group of people together, connected in these rigid systems, and we can make it happen. And in Western Lapland, it has been working for many, many years, even many decades, even though there has been challenges during the last 10 years or so. But when you, Bruce, were talking about your ideas and your experiences and definitions, and so I went back 20 years back, that, yeah, what were my first definitions, and what was I told them to be, and how did I continue to work on that? But for me, dialogue, also, again, I'm talking about the system in a system-wise way, that when I'm in the system or when I'm in structures of systems, I need continuous connection. And that is something that the frame needs to provide for me. That we are having, I'm thinking about, Sarah, as you were talking about the relational spaces. Was that so? What you wanted to, yeah. So I'm thinking that how the relationality remains. For me, it's about constant dialogue. It's about constant space creation where that can happen all the time, so that we can stay connected in organizations, so that we can try to stay connected and invite people to be connected, who come and look for help, who are coming to have care or treatment. So I'm using these words also knowing that they are very loaded and charged. So what to use. But this was something that started to go around in my head. And of course, in able to make this all happen, that the 7 principles of open dialogue are something that are really giving a frame and a structure for this. These principles are making the dialogue happen. Yes, Alita is writing here. Oh, yes. The 7 principles, yeah.
That's very helpful, Mia, because the part I've had the most trouble with is, since I'm not a therapist, is understanding what you mean in therapy. And I've just been struggling with that in the Taos conversations, because almost everyone in these conversations comes from a therapeutic background, and I don't. And so there's a common understanding that I don't have. And so what you've said has been very helpful to me, because it starts to fill in those gaps of the relationship between what I've heard other people say. We have a shared common understanding of what we mean by dialogue and how that relates to the therapeutic situation. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'll add something in, because I too would say, Bruce, thank you for bringing in the words that you did. The description of nurturing spaces, of the unknown, of the in-between, of nurturing spaces where emergence, where new possibilities, new ways of thinking, and even feeling might emerge. That's all very familiar to me in terms of how I hold dialogue and experience of dialogue, the importance of the relational field, and I would say the importance of recognizing and actually embodying the recognition of the relational fields, because it's, they're there, period. It's just whether we actually act as though they're there. So I think the other thing, because I come out of a background that's not therapeutic, but rather coming from David Bohm's proposal of dialogue, which is very much comes out of the sciences, and philosophy. And I think while it can be very therapeutic, it's interesting. I would say the piece that I would add in to this kind of flow is the piece of what he would call proprioception of thought and metacognition. So that, creating the spaces for us to be in relationship and to be able to speak openly about what we're feeling and our thoughts. A primary purpose of that is to make visible our thought systems. Because, I think his proposal is accurate for me. The ways in which we constellate, the ways in which we think about and we organize our ideas and our assumptions about how the world works and how relationships work determine the choices that we make. So in other words, we're busy creating our reality in every moment and reinforcing what we've created. So I think there's another aspect. And when I think about the mental health system, and bringing in open dialogue at the relational therapeutic level, I'm also curious about whether or not there's also a focus on looking systemically at what we've created in terms of the mental health system that exists, through the thoughts we hold and the ways in which we define things, say things work. To what degree do those actually to what degree does that knowledge limit us, define and therefore limit? And sometimes I feel that, making the thought, one of the functions of making the thought system visible, other than the sense of proprioception and actually being able to know what we're actually up to, is that as it becomes visible and we're able to do that from a place of witness, we also are able to let it go. And I think and move into the unknown, from which there can be, the new can actually emerge. And then another level of consciousness is available to us. So those are some of the things that I would add in terms of how I hold dialogue. Thank you for listening.
I really appreciated that. And actually, I think I need a reflection. Judith, would you like to listen to my reflection about that?
Sure, Alita, yes. And then maybe I'll respond. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's
So
okay with everyone, is that all right with everyone that we do that? Yeah. Okay.
yes.
Wait, just tell me what you're going to do. Describe the process.
Yes, that's
I
I'm
haven't
gonna
encountered
I'm
this
gonna
before.
have I'm gonna
fantastic.
have a conversation with Judith, and she's gonna listen to me while the rest of you observe.
And
Um,
then I may well respond to what's coming up for me. And then we come back to the whole group and
Mhm.
ask for thoughts. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So this idea that David Bohm, as you know, Judith, when we were writing the paper, I was walking by in the middle of the night when we were making the revisions to the paper, and I saw that book by David Bohm and co-written by F. David Pete, and I opened to this part that I said, oh, I've got to put this in the paper, you know, and it was in there about this idea of not the free floating of ideas offered from dialogue and not as a prescription, basically, that was something to do with that. And, you know, when I think about mental health being separate from anything else, I mean, you know, David Bohm and Krishnamurti had these dialogue groups for the purpose of just emergence, but for the purpose of having interpersonal neurobiology be a thing that they were allowing to happen and possibly could maybe make differences in the problems of the world, you know, including climate change and all these real things happening back in the 80s, you know, in the 70s. So it's still happening now. So I just was thinking about myself as Glenna was talking about this, how to let go of the fixing, how to, you know, because I went to Helsinki, did this training, started this training consultation company, and, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, let's change all the codes so that two practitioners can be in the room, and there's all this evidence of that it helps with psychosis. And well, what do I do with all that when everyone goes, nah, we're fine, we're gonna just keep doing it the same old way, you know? And I guess what I do with it is I just have to stay in contact with people and human beings. I have to stay in contact and say ouch, you know, when I don't like something, and actually stick up for people when they're being maltreated, or, you know, I don't know. I just had to say my experience with that because it just, so thanks for listening, Judith.
What came up for me in listening was that moment of the email or message coming through saying, I'd want to include this in the paper. And, you know, I think these are moments of dialogue. Okay, there's you and here's me. And, you know, it's how do we, but I'll just talk about myself, how do I respond to that? Is a desire that, you know, in a group exercise that you wanted to include that. And I can remember, it was early morning here when I got the message, and I remember thinking, oh, that's so academic. It felt academic in terms of the process that we were doing with the paper. That was my initial response. And then over time, it just seemed to slot in and be necessary. So again, I'm talking about sort of polarities of like left brain and right brain, and academic and feeling a sense, you know, felt sense. And I think in response to the question of what is dialogue, I think probably I'm a very simple soul in a way. And I've always thought of the infant and a carer, and that moment where both the infant and I'm just going to personalize it, myself and my child. And I am with that child and that child is with me, but I'm in myself, but I'm also so strongly connected to the other, to my child. And that for me has always epitomized dialogue. And that's an easy dialogue. It was for me, it was an easy dialogue, right? But as we grow, I think we sort of, difference and different sense of self that might not be sort of so fitting with the other come in. And so that's where I'm left. I'm sort of left with so many questions and so many wonderings about such a simple question of what is dialogue. But I do feel I need to, and I wish I had the quote, but Birgitta wrote something about the dialogical space once when we were in the training. And this was to Annie and I when we asked a question. And she said it's when two people or two or more people are together, and I will find it if you'll excuse me, I'll have to go shift across, but two or more people are together and both are in their own self, but they're also connected, able to stay connected to the other. And I think that was the most beautiful, for me, the most beautiful definition of dialogue. And I really loved to use her words, and because she was so important in open dialogue. Yeah.
I wrote her name there. Birgitta Alakara she was the head psychiatrist at Kurtti Hospital in Western Lapland, instrumental in its development, but she would always say, it was not just me.
Will we ask for people's responses, Alita?
Yes,
Do you think?
thank you.
Yeah. To our talk. How did anything come up for anybody in listening?
Yeah, lots of things came up. One of the things was the connection, let interpersonal neurobiology happen. So one of the ways that I've been thinking about relational space and the relational fields is how being in dialogue and I think dialogue, you could say, is kind of an intentional relational space. And it's practicing being connected and feeling connected. And that practice is part of healing on a societal level, healing the fragmentation that we could say is associated with pulling everything apart in our, in ways of thinking, and the way that, science started to look at parts, and then maybe we lost a sense of the whole, and now we're coming back to the whole and science and how systems thinking. And so one of the things that has been very interesting to me, and I feel like in that the reason that dialogue is therapeutic, and I also come from an adult education space, so not a therapy space, except for my own personal experiences of non-secure attachment. And I wonder, in that beautiful definition, Judith, of the dialogic space, of being fully in myself and feeling connected. And even your example of the primary attachment relationship. So because of chronic disconnection and toxic stress and trauma that gets transmitted across generations through those attachment relationships, and then perpetuated within systems that are disconnecting people, let's say. I feel like adult learning spaces that practice dialogue, it is a therapy, it's the coming together of what we know from therapeutic spaces into learning spaces, because we spend so much time, like right now, this is a learning space, but it has the potential of supporting that integration from an interpersonal neurobiology through experiencing connection. And the other, so the concept that I'm like making visible, I think, Glenna, you mentioned this, like making visible the invisible, as Krishnamurti and David Bohm were, like where David Bohm was talking about making the relational space visible, because it's there. We are, like you said, the field is always there. But how do we make it visible? So, and then how do I find in my body to actually experience? So in my head, I can understand, but in my body, I can't feel it necessarily. And so how, like the idea of the polarities and the dynamic movement between polarities rather than a fixing kind of a thing. I wonder about how my understanding of relational space and then this other notion of relational diversity. So relational diversity being the diversity of capacities to feel connected based on, in this case, attachment style, for example, as one thing. Yeah, and I loved that it's like a side conversation, but it's a witnessing opportunity, and trying to feel how that feels to be. It felt really different, actually. I enjoyed that feeling of being able to witness a conversation and then bring it. So I'm very curious. So those are some things that came up.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, I'm sorry I came late, but I'm keeping trace of all the things that you're saying. And this small talk or dialogue that Judith and Alita had made me feel, well, there are a lot of things that are popping on my mind. I'm from Mexico and my English may be not so fluent, but I'm trying to put it in a concrete way so I can make myself understand. But what I was feeling was that what Alita said about staying, what was the word? Keep on in the connection. And that made me feel that here in Mexico, sometimes I'm a family therapist, so I work with a lot of violence, familiar violence, and I really felt so near what Alita was saying, because when in my mind I cannot do much. I mean, the whole system, the you know, like the violence, the context, the bad situation, economic situation, and a lot of stuff that can come to my mind. And I thought that what kept me with this, let's say, this woman who's suffering from violence is just staying there. And it's a very hard thing to do, for me at least, because, but I have found that helps a lot for me and the other. And what made me think was that this space, this relational space, has to do with our vulnerabilities. And when I am sitting there and just being there for her, it's for me very important to register my body and my vulnerability somehow. And when I talk about that, and somehow that makes like the connection with them, with her in this case. So I was just thinking about that, like the relational space created with somehow like a river underground of vulnerabilities or feelings that they are hard to put in words, but they are there. Well, that's where my mind went when I was hearing all these interesting things that you were saying. Thank you.
That image is with me, and I was feeling, I was looking at Cathy when you said river, Nora, river, that we don't have the words. And Cathy and Mia and Judith, to me, are like part of this river for me. And actually, in some strange way, they are part of my network, like an open dialogue is about treatment for people in a crisis, but I think all of us have a little bit of crisis going on with our world, and we were in a crisis. So it's just sort of, we had these network meetings. In open dialogue, a network meeting is the treatment, where the people that are treating the person and then their network come together and they meet all together. Always that way, not separate, talking to the doctor on their own, but they're in a group. So they're sort of like my network, and the river, is, I can't say any more than that. Part of a river. Cathy, you're like.
You just went on mute, Alita, at that.
I said, tell me about the river.
Tell you about the river. It's the thing, I guess, for me, beyond words. And Nora, you sort of said it so beautifully, but it is about our somehow connecting through our vulnerability and our bodies. So many times online I've shared something that's happening in my body, and that will be responded to as and in mine. That's happening in my body too. We don't even have to be in the same physical space, but something happens that connects us. And I think feeling safe enough to be vulnerable, I suppose, with us as four women when we show up online, is what we hope the people that we work together with feel as well, because there's something, it feels cheesy saying it, but it's something quite healing sometimes when you can share, when I can share some of my really yucky stuff and it just be held and responded to, just human to human. That does something to my body. It kind of calms me, and I can breathe better. That's my river, I think, Alita and Nora.
Also to say, I mean, of course, this is a bit off from the kind of frame that we are talking about, but just mentioning, because it's there for me. Dialogue is being used in peace processes also around the world in different places because of these elements it has. So it really has potential for everything, to solving everything in that sense, because it gives people this feeling of being held and heard when the process of holding that is whole. So And I don't know, maybe the working mental health systems has some similarity with the peace processes. I don't know. But I think that when there's lots of hatred and agony and horror in the room, it needs unconditional presence, or at least invitation to everybody to stay there and to be held unconditionally. Yet we know that can be a real challenge with the diverse voices in the room as well. I'm aware of the time. Is it so that we have 2 minutes left? Yes, Alex is nodding there. I wonder if there's someone who hasn't said anything, who wants to say something.
I would like to say that it was nice to listen to what you talked about. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. It was nice to be listened to.
I also wanted to say thank you. I'm slightly less confused now, which is a big thing.
And I'm just appreciate. Go ahead.
Go on. Okay, thank you. I also wanted to say thank you, but also share that I felt in my body at the beginning very strong emotions. I think I recognize that it's a very important space for me, and I'm leaving with a very strong feeling that I would like this space to continue, which sometimes happens, but now it's very present.
Thank you.
And Glenna, you were about to speak.
No longer necessary. Thank you, though.
Does anyone else like to say words in terms of closing?
Maybe I'd just like to share that what I think what used to happen when the four of us women meet, or does happen when we meet, and I'm just wondering if it will happen from this meeting, is that often new things come up afterwards. So it seems to continue on. It's not, oh, close, finish the Zoom. Things seem to pop up afterwards. So I'm just curious as to whether that might happen. And that seems to be something that happens where there's been dialogue, Bruce. So just a wondering, yeah.
Thank you, Judith, for pointing that that word that I use, closing. So instead, I first would like to thank you, Alita, Mia, Judith, Cathy. Thank you for hosting this conversation, for your work, for sharing your article. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And the recording will be posted in the Taos Institute Commons. And that's also a space where we're trying to continue. So it's also an invitation to reach out to one another. So you can find all of you in the community. You can reach out to each other. You can start group chats or group comments. So hopefully it's providing some ways of staying connected and keeping sharing the thoughts that emerge after today's event. So with that, again, a big thank you for coming, and we will see you around.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Sarah,
Good night.
you can stay connected to us. You can reach us anytime.